And now, a WFXR News special presentation honoring Black history. Brought to you by Hamler Curtis Funeral Home and Crematory.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our WFXR special presentation honoring Black History 2025. I'm Jermaine Farrell.
And I'm Hazel Marie Anderson. Over the next half hour, the WFXR new team will actually show you places, people, and even organizations across Southwest and Central Virginia that tell the stories of African Americans shaping our past, our present, and our future.
So let's get this one started with one of the biggest ways African Americans have shaped our region and our nation, and that's through music.
That's right.
Now, one of the big genres, there's gospel, many genres between. Black Americans created, nurtured, and evolved these art forms as a way to express their empowerment and freedom.
And at the intersection of all those styles is funk music with a sound and a soul that's unique. Now, I met a man from Lynchburg, and he took the groove, his love of the groove, and created the School of Funk, ensuring the vibe is under one nation, under a groove, for vibes of centuries to come.
It's kind of like funk is undefinable, really.
Funk is a feeling.
No matter what type of feeling, like it can be up, down, sad, blase, but you just listen to some funk music, man, you're gonna be dancing for hours.
Some would argue that funk isn't just a musical genre, but it's also a way of life. And it's all about the groove.
And as Bootsy Collins taught us all when we were younger, everything is on the one. So if you're a music person, everything has to hit on the one, and then you fill in the spaces in between with all kind of cool stuff, but you land back on the one.
We know the fundamentals of funk, but who created funk?
James Brown was funky, and he was called the godfather of soul. Sly and the Family Stone had elements of funk. Style of funk that I like, which is P-Funk, which is the George Clinton thing. That is a whole lane of its own.
Tony Cam said that he was 14 years old when he heard the vivid and psychedelic sounds of Parliament Funkadelic making their way through the speakers. And thanks to them and Earth, Wind, and Fire, he knew he wanted to be a musician.
I put these shows on in the basement all the time to myself.
Flash forward 40 years later, Tony Cam's love of music hasn't stopped. It has evolved. He noticed that there was a need for young musicians to be seen and heard in a world where music is being created through computers. And with one passing conversation, the School of Funk project was born.
I was worried at first because I said, well, our kids gonna sign up to do funk music.
And like they say, build it and they will come. And with the collaborations from Building Bridges Productions and Music is Forever, what started with a class of 3 young musicians in 2023 has grown to 10.
He's taking a chance on these kids. Give these kids a chance.
School of Funk Project is a nonprofit where young musicians perform, learn, record, and produce music while working alongside professional musicians like Tony and the Funk All-Stars. Classes are free, but the lessons they're learning are priceless.
When a young person has the ability to explore, to feel their way around, it does something to their synaptic responses. You know, there's a connection being made.
And one connection is the life experiences the school gives these young musicians.
Wanted to bring kids into our band and not treat them like kids, but treat them like young musicians and give them that real life experience. So come out, do a show, take everything down, pack it up, travel back, and get paid. It's phenomenal to see that. It's almost like that caterpillar butterfly thing.
Tony's talking about what it's like to see young performers blossom and gain confidence. 10-year-old London was shy to speak to us on camera, but when you put those drumsticks in her hand, she became electric.
There's something totally different to turn around, to see them light up and see the audience respond to what they just did.
Is the real reward, says Tony. He goes on to share how proud he is of the School of Funk project and hopes his vision expands to create one nation of kids under the groove.
The genesis is right here in little old Lynchburg, Virginia. who knows, man, we have a whole nation of kids playing funk, man.
In Lynchburg, Hazel Marie Anderson, WFXR News.
Thank you so much, Hazel Marie. That was music to my ears. Now, while the School of Funk looks to the future, Southwest Virginia has plenty of musical history in its past. A lot of that history was made at a little joint in Martinsville, where some legendary black artists left their stamp on the city. But even though time and progress threaten to wash away that stamp, WFXR's Zoe Mowry shows us the fight to make sure the Paradise Inn is never forgotten.
Lawrence Mitchell was born in Martinsville in 1953, just blocks away from where the Paradise Inn once stood. Built in 1917, Mitchell's grandparents and parents enjoyed the liveliness of the inn, and to him, that meant Paradise was home.
You know, I used to walk by here all the time, look over, wish I could, go in at certain times. I used to, shoot pool at the local pool hall, and just go up and down the street. There was a little supermarket down the street. The mayor, the first African-American mayor, used to live right down here on the street. So it was just an avenue of just people walking and talking.
Mitchell says inside Paradise Inn were the best hot dogs and cheeseburgers, a barber shop, beauty salon, meat market, and grocery store. In short, everything you needed was inside that 4-story building.
People met there, fell in love there. People lived there. People went and they danced. They had a good time. It was just a place you could go and for one night forget that somehow being a person of color in America was a bad thing. It was a place where it was a good thing. It was a fun thing.
Paradise Inn was also on the circuit where African-American entertainers would go to perform. Places like Roanoke and Danville, they always ended up inside the inn to stay and play.
Paradise was known in the evening, on the weekend, for its partying, so to speak, all right? So it was a place where it was on the circuit where a lot of the soul singers and different things, people came through. James Brown was here. You name them, they all came through Paradise.
The building was abandoned in the 90s. A new owner later took over and renovated the outside of the building, which took away from the possibility for the project to qualify for historical grants. In 2023, the city learned it would cost $5 million just to stabilize the building. At the time, Mitchell was on city council, and they decided to demolish the building. But the Fayette Area Historical Initiative Museum has a little piece of Paradise, and they hope to expand it.
We may get to a point where we can give you almost like the Paradise experience, when you come to the museum. Of course, we can't replace the people, and we can't always evoke the soul of those individuals because we're not going through what they were going through at that time, but we can kind of give you an insight.
Paradise is just, the center, and hopefully in the future, something will become a paradise again. Someone will come and remember the community, and somehow put something that would contribute back to what Paradise is.
The Fahey Museum is continuing to document the forgotten Black history in Martinsville and the surrounding counties. In Martinsville, Zoe Mowry, WFXR News.
Well, sports is one of our region's richest lifebloods, and Black athletes and coaches have blazed their share of trails through Southwest and Central Virginia. Now, among them is Frankie Allen, who made history playing basketball and then did it again as a coach. WFXR's Ryan Moy caught up with him about his career and how his journey has helped pave the way for others.
The word impact means to have a strong effect on someone or something. And for the first Black student athlete at Roanoke College, Frankie Allen, let's just say he's the living embodiment of the definition.
It was not easy being the only Black student on campus in 1967. And you had to understand that the 60s were kind of some turbulent years. There were a lot of things going on. There were campus unrest, there had just been an assassination of a president 3 or 4 years earlier. So there were a lot of political things that were going on.
The former Roanoke College basketball player is one of the most decorated in Roanoke College history, with records that have yet to be broken. He then would become the first Black head basketball coach over at Virginia Tech and in the Commonwealth. And with all the amazing accolades, it's the doors that he opened that he's most proud of.
If this thing had gone the wrong way, it would have been maybe a bad stigma for a lot of other young players, not to be able to move up, especially young Black players, young talented kids. to have that opportunity. And after, doing some of the things that I did, it opened the door for a lot of other schools in the area, in the state, in the bordering states like North Carolina to take a chance on these young black athletes. And again, it put us in the mainstream of what the culture was going to be evolving to as we speak.
His time on the floor has led to multiple Hall of Fame honors, including Roanoke College, Virginia Sports, and more recently, the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame.
When I got the call for the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame, that just kind of blew my mind. I just said, wow, I can't believe it after all these years. And just figured that it recognized, what I'd done in the past, and it kind of highlighted, my career, brought it full circle, so to speak.
For Allen, he's grateful to people like his mother, former head coach Charlie Moyer, and current Roanoke College president Frank Shushak. But he also owes a lot to his teammates that continue to support him on and off the court.
I was really, truly blessed, the fact that my teammates were just good guys. Like in other words, that locker room was kind of a sacred place. One of my closest friends, it was a second black basketball player to come, this guy named James Sticks Stewart. He still lives in the Roanoke area, and we laugh all the time about it because Sticks said, man, I wouldn't come here if it hadn't been for you. And I said, I was just looking for somebody else that I could kind of hug, and we'd go to the same barbershop. Then it was Hal Johnston. I can't say enough about him. He was from Salem, and I think it helped me in the community because, away from Roanoke College, we'd have to go out and do different things. But Hal kind of said, when I was with Hal, people kind of look at me quizzically, but Hal would kind of just smile and say, give me a stamp of approval, like Frankie's okay, whatever. So, those teammates that I had other teammates through the years, they really meant a lot to me.
As Allen continues to champion change, he has a message for those following in his footsteps.
The only question I would ask right now of this generation coming aboard, kind of look back and see what people did before you and see if you can't carry on some of that legacy.
In Salem, Ryan Moy, WFXR Sports.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Now, whatever your walk of life, history proves anyone can answer the call to act. Dr. Brenda Hale has done that for decades, first as a nurse in the U.S. Army for 13 years, and now as president of Roanoke's local chapter of the NAACP. Among the inspirations for her activism is the most influential civil rights activist in American history.
It goes back to Dr. King. The minute that I met Dr. King in 1963 at Central High School in Bridgeport, Connecticut, he pulled my pigtails. I wore pigtails even in high school. And I became a student of Dr. King and his message of nonviolence and fighting for individuals. And it didn't matter what your station in life was, especially if you were oppressed. And there were so many people oppressed, not by their own choice, but the situations and circumstances that were showered down on them. So if you know history, we came up from slavery. So whenever you think back to your ancestors, if you really understand what they went through so you can have the rights that you have right now, then there's no reasons why you shouldn't want to fight for other people that cannot do the fight. Everybody is not chosen to be that fighter, So if you're chosen and if you're blessed in that regard, then I feel like you can't turn a blind eye to it and you must serve.
Now, Dr. Hale is the first African-American elected as secretary for the state of Virginia's Board of Nursing. Now, she was instrumental in reactivating the Roanoke NAACP Youth Council in 2010 to help develop future activists.
Well, coming up, a fixture in Roanoke for a quarter of a century. Sherman Lee's historic tenure as mayor may be over, but you'll hear from him on why his work is far from over. Plus, one of the most impactful names in the civil rights movement is a name you may not know. Thanks to years of persistence in Roanoke and the nation's capital, see how everyone will know Reuben Lawson's name and legacies for decades to come.
Honoring Black History will return after these messages. We now return to Honoring Black History.
And welcome back to Honoring Black History with a man who's made plenty of it in the city of Roanoke. Sherman Lee served 20 years on the city council, then 8 more as mayor. And while he's out of office, now he tells WFXR's Ron Marasco he's far from done working for the city he loves.
Former Mayor Sherman Lee loves the Star City so much, he still attends public events, even in retirement.
1, 2, 3. Whoa! There you go.
Recently, he cut the ribbon celebrating the grand opening of the new fire and EMS training center in the Riverdale community. I sat down with Mayor Lee at the event to talk about his time in office and life afterward.
Public service is getting more and more demanding now, and again, I have spent a lot part of my life in public service.
No more official duties, but unofficially, he'll remain engaged.
But I want to stay active. I just don't want to just walk away from everything.
He says he's proud of much of his work on the council, including buying key pieces of land, Roanoke being named an All-American City several times, working to help curb domestic violence in the city, and partnering with Carilion to ensure it remains a top-notch medical facility.
I feel within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be one of the best medical research facilities on the East Coast, and we're going to put pressure on Duke University and Johns Hopkins University. We'll be sitting in the middle.
But it's the people and the relationships, Mayor Lee says, that make Roanoke special.
We're a welcoming, engaging community.
He also recognizes the contributions African Americans have made to the city.
We have a lot of black history here. I really admire the progressiveness of African American citizens here in the city.
He points out several city buildings bear the names of distinguished black Americans and also points to a statue near City Hall.
We recently had a statue of Henrietta Lacks built there. She was the lady that had the sail that wouldn't die.
Mayor Lee also takes pride when talking about his youth basketball league.
Lee Youth Outdoor Basketball League, which brought police officers together with young people.
And speaking of pride in basketball, he gushes about his favorite team.
The Lakers were just an organization. They were always prepared, and I enjoyed how they worked and played under pressure. And I'm hoping with LeBron James now they'll get back to win another championship.
Another banner for the Lakers, reminiscent of the banners we see flying downtown.
I think there's some good things happening here, and I'm proud to be a citizen of the Star City of Roanoke.
And many are proud to say Sherman Lee was their mayor. In Roanoke, Ron Marasco, WFXR News.
Thanks, Ron. Well, pivotal moments in history don't usually happen on their own. Someone has to make them happen. A man named Reuben E. Lawson is responsible for a seismic shift in the civil rights movement, and now his name will be etched into the city for many years to come. WFXR's Sydney Jacksheimer has the story.
I knew him as somebody who was quiet-spoken, but really determined.
Born in Danville, Reuben Lawson spent his adult life practicing law in Roanoke. He served as the NAACP lawyer in the Star City, working alongside Reverend Edward Burton, who was the group's vice president.
And to be able to work with the lawyer in our community who was taking these cases to court one by one, and it must have been the right thing to do because every case he took to court, he won.
Those cases integrating schools across Southwest Virginia in the 1950s and 60s.
You know, there was great resistance to following Brown versus Board of Education, not just in Virginia, but all across the country. And so Reuben Lawson said, hey, we're going to try to enforce the law of the land. And so he brought the cases that integrated Roanoke City schools, Salem schools, Roanoke County schools, Lynchburg, a number of rural districts in this region.
Lawson died shortly after in 1963, and many worried his legacy might die with him. That wasn't until a few years ago when Roanoke lawyer John Fishwick started learning more about Lawson and his impact.
He was a real trailblazer,
which fueled Fishwick's efforts to rename Roanoke's federal courthouse, the Richard H. Poff building, to the Reuben E. Lawson building.
It's a great feeling. You know, it's been about a 2.5-year project that we worked on to rename Roanoke's federal building after Reuben E. Lawson, a federal civil rights trial lawyer, a trailblazer, a real icon in this area, who died young, kind of somebody who'd been forgotten in the history books, and I think we were able to bring him back to life.
While the sign right now still reflects Poff's name, the renaming is etched in federal law. Introduced by Senator Mark Warner, passed by Congress, and signed by then President Joe Biden.
Ruben E. Lawson Federal Building.
I think telling the full story of Virginia, the good, the bad, the ugly, and recognizing people like Ruben Lawson that might not have been a household name is part of a 21st century Virginia.
Once the sign outside the courthouse is updated, advocates like Fishwick and Burton say it'll be a monument to the continued progress that defined Lawson's life.
I am really enthused that the building would be named after a man who had really worked so hard and who had worked smoothly and who had helped us to bring about what needed to be done in that day and time.
And welcome back to our Honoring Black History special. Now, Edward R. Dudley was not the first black ambassador in the United States history, but he was also a Roanoke native.
Now you can explore his history, including photos, writings, and more, right in his old neighborhood. WFXR's Rian Lowndes has the story.
I just feel he did an exceptional job in civil rights.
Edward R. Dudley was the United States' first black ambassador, serving in Liberia under President Harry Truman and expanding opportunities for black civil servants abroad. After that, he was elected to the New York Supreme Court. But before all of this, he grew up in Gainsboro.
He grew up on Gilmer Avenue. In fact, he grew up next door to another legal titan, Oliver Hill. He graduated from Lucy Addison High School here in Roanoke and then went off to college really with the intention of maybe becoming a dentist and following in his father's footsteps. But he ultimately went to law school.
Former mayor and local historian Nelson Harris applied for the historic marker that now stands on the corner of Gainsboro and Gilmer, memorializing Dudley's career and impact.
I always find these markers to be educational, sometimes inspirational, as is the case with Edward Dudley.
The barrier breaker's son, Edward R. Dudley Jr., came to Roanoke in December for the unveiling.
To see so many people that were excited to learn about my father was just a wonderful experience.
Immediately after, he donated a collection of his father's photographs and letters to the Gainsboro Library. After a visit to the Virginia Wiley Room to see the contribution, I caught up with Dudley over the phone.
A lot of papers, I'm 82 now, that I thought were interesting. I thought it would be nice to have them in Roanoke. It all started when, I wanted to try to help my father, who I think is a terrific hero of this country, to get more known.
The collection includes letters to and from historic figures, Representative Franklin D. Roosevelt Jr. and colleague Thurgood Marshall. Dudley had an extensive career as a civil rights lawyer. Before his ambassadorship, Marshall recruited him to become special assistant at the NAACP, where the two men fought for equal pay in schools.
Even though you come from slavery, my father always felt that he was exceptionally smart and could do anything on merit. That was one of the biggest problems of the separate but equal schools, is blacks felt inferior. And he was one person that absolutely was confident that given the chance, he could do as good a job as anyone. And that's the inspiration that you get from him and his story.
Honoring Black History will return after these messages.
Welcome back. Well, the Roanoke Tribune has been making and recording Black history in the Star City for more than 8 decades.
Indeed, Hazel Marie, and it has no plans to stop. WFXR Sam Graham has the story.
Stanley Hale was truly born to be an editor at the Roanoke Tribune. He's the son of current publisher Claudia Whitworth, who took the paper over from its original owner, her dad, in 1971. And while Hale had been helping his mother out since he was 11 or 12, it took a little while for the paper's significance to sink in as an adult.
I had certain friends that kept stressing the importance of this paper to me, and I was like, wait a minute, am I missing something?
Growing up, he explored other passions, but ultimately he was drawn back to the family business, a decision he says has been incredibly fulfilling.
I get a little bummed out because I'm in the news and I'm inundated with it. But I keep thinking, baby, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. Because goodness always rises.
When Hale's grandfather, Reverend F.E. Alexander, founded the Tribune back in 1939, he also established 3 other papers across Southwest Virginia. 86 years later, only the Tribune remains, and the family's commitment deserves the credit.
I love these people. I mean, I do. Because I need them. And they are my subsistence. You can't do anything on your own.
And, he says, in an increasingly negative world, the Tribune provides a fresh perspective for readers by highlighting the region's positive moments.
That's what we do. We try to inspire through our little paper with a purpose.
We put news that's important as well, but it's mostly good news and positive things that's going on in this area. And we need more of that.
Lee Pierre interned with the paper while a student at Roanoke College and returned in a volunteer capacity after finishing a career in education. She believes the paper has survived the test of time because it hasn't lost its touch with the area it serves.
I think that's why this paper has lasted so long, because it reaches out to the churches, it reaches out to the schools, it reaches out to the elderly who are sitting at home and don't know what's going on with their friends down the street.
Hale and the Tribune know the world is becoming more digital by the day, and they intend to expand its online footprint. But they agree. The Tribune's roots are firmly planted in paper and ink and have no intention of abandoning that.
I know it's a dot-com world we're living in, but I hear like people call in here when they don't get that paper. And they mad, man.
In Roanoke, Sam Graham, WFXR News.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you all for joining us. I'm Jermaine Farrell.
And I'm Hazel Marie Anderson. We hope you have a good night.